The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Dani Mechlowitz of Delta Fulfillment, founder and managing director over there. And we're going to dive into what Delta Fulfillment's all about. They're a 3PL based out of the UK. And we're going to hear a little bit about what the 3PL market is like in the UK compared to maybe the US or some other countries. And we're also going to dive a little bit into the idea of an ICP, or ideal customer profile, and what that looks like for Delta Fulfillment and how they've kind of managed to stick to that, which can oftentimes be a little bit of a struggle for some 3PLs. And we're also going to talk to them about what they've seen over the last 7 years that they've been in business. And we'll kind of wrap it up too, talking about the little future of Delta Fulfillment, which has recently started with a new facility. So, Dani, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. It's taken a while to get to this point.
Definitely. We've been trying to have Dani on for a little while, and the schedules have been a little misaligned, but now they're aligning and they've come together, and the sun is shining on us today to make this happen. So definitely happy to connect with you, Dani. So why don't we start? Give us a little kind of brief overview of Delta Fulfillment. What is it all about from your perspective? And tell us a little bit too about how you came to found it. You're the founder of Delta Fulfillment. So, where did the idea come from? How did you get into the 3PL world?
Yeah, no problem. So I've been in the logistics space for my whole career. I wouldn't say a long career, but in the last 13 years, I've been in the world of logistics. First 6-7 years were mainly focused on sort of air freight, sea freight, carrier movements. So I already had a foot in the door in logistics, understanding the movement of goods around the world and working with many different importers and brands and developing relationships with them. I had at the time, probably 7-8 years ago, some customers who we were looking after their products, moving products around. And they said to us, can you look after the full circle for us, the full supply chain? Can you warehouse the goods in the UK? And at that time, they were in the world of dropshipping. So dropshipping, has many different explanations or many different ways of describing it. But the dropshipping that we were looking at that point was there was a lot of retailers in the UK, the likes of, again, I know your American listeners here, but Argos, Shop Direct, The Range, and various others who traditionally would have bought the products in bulk from these importers. And as e-commerce was really taking off, 7 years ago, but obviously e-commerce has been taking off 15 years, but the world of e-commerce, the ease of people understanding e-commerce was becoming a lot more clear. These retailers wanted the importers who own the products to drop ship the products directly to the consumer. So they wanted the importers to be able to log in or connect to the back end of the retailer's website, and as the orders came in on a daily basis, they wanted to be able to dispatch those products. So when we first entered this world of 3PL and e-commerce, it was actually through a drop shipping solution that we were offering to these clients.
Interesting.
So that's the way we started. We took a small warehouse on, small team, inexperienced team, mostly myself, not experienced in the warehousing world. We built a system, we built connections, we spent a lot of time on integrations, and we developed a good solution to offer these importers to help further their growth with the retailers in question. And then obviously things developed from there. As we built out the solution and built out the warehouse and the various methodologies in the warehouse and the products that we wanted, we realized that our key target customer was really someone who owned their own website. So who was in full control of the advertising, the marketing, full control of when stuff goes out of stock, in stock, that was our key. That was someone who could work with us, someone who could grow with us. So as the business developed over the years, we moved away from the drop shipping world and we moved more into the, shall we call it, Shopify world. And that's where we are today. We've developed that further. We've moved away from the Amazon, eBay type marketplace fulfillment. We still do probably a good share of that, but our focus of new customers are customers who have their own website, generally run by Shopify, and we are doing their full fulfillment solution for them in the UK.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting story there. And I didn't realize that you've been in logistics for your whole career there as well, even prior to Delta Fulfillment. So very interesting stuff there. And, you mentioned there, talking about kind of, the customer that has these certain attributes and, that makes sense for you to work with and things of that nature. So that kind of leads into the next question here where, we look at, and with 3PLs, I think there's a lot of discussion and, I see it in these communities that I think we're both a part of, and these chats as well, where, people are talking about the ICP, right? Or the ideal customer profile. And I thought it was very interesting. I'm doing a little research here, prep for our conversation, and I saw on the Delta Fulfillment LinkedIn page that you guys recently posted about, defining your ICP was easy, right? But I think it said sticking to it was difficult, right? That's the hard part, right? Because I think, if you have a 3PL or you're starting a 3PL or any business, right? You kind of, you want to make money in a sense, right? So you're kind of like going out there and you're trying to figure out, this person wants to work with me, but it's not exactly maybe who I want to work with, but we need to make money. So it's hard to stay within that. So I'm curious, as you started to evolve and you talked about, maybe moving away from some of the marketplaces more to the Shopify type brands. Tell us a little bit about kind of that process in defining your ICP and, where were there some struggles to be able to stick to that and how did you kind of, get disciplined about it and, get to the point where you are today and focused in on that ICP specifically?
Yeah, good question. Like you said, the first 2 to 3, 4 years of building a 3PL, you don't have the luxury. Most 3PLs don't have the luxury to be too picky. You need, ultimately, if you're going to build a team and invest in a management team and structure, you need business, you need revenue to come into the building to pay for, to get you through. And I think as part of that as well, as part of those first 3-4 years, you also use that as an area to learn. So the 3PL is coming into it with no major investment and as a bootstrap, shall we say. The first few years are really a good learning curve years to understand, to fix the processes, build the systems, bring customers in. Some customers will be ones who are really good, some customers who won't be good, but you really understand and you really gain the clarity what a good customer is and what a bad customer is, because in the world of 3PL, they're night and day. And this doesn't mean the bad customer is a bad business. It just means it doesn't fit your warehouse. And depending on in which direction you're going in, you need the right customer that you can provide the service that they want and also at the right price. So defining the ICP is critical. And like I say, it took us a good probably 4 or 5 years to really become confident in what we believed was where we wanted to target and the category we wanted to target, the type of customers we wanted. And we've got better at it. We've still not, I wouldn't say we're perfect, but we've behind the scenes, we've developed a scorecarding system. So when we are speaking to new potential businesses, we look at number of orders, number of SKUs, seasonality, size of product, packaging requirements, and we tie all these things together and we see what score it gets. And there's never going to, yes, every so often we come across someone who's amazing at every single aspect and will score 50 out of 50. Generally, that doesn't happen. So generally, a customer will have a certain aspect which isn't quite there. But if everything else ticks the box, then in most cases, we will take the punt and bring those customers in. But not only that, what I would add is that just because you brought a customer in who fits the ICP, maybe 50 out of 50, 49 out of 50, you've still got to review that customer every 3 to 6 months, because a lot of these brands, especially the brands that we are taking on, are only themselves around 2 to 3 years into their journey. And those brands themselves are defining themselves, are growing. When you take them on, they may only do D2C, and then 6 months later, they may have broken into retail and started a whole retail and rework division, which doesn't mean they're bad, but their profiles are changing so often, and their SKU count's changing, and the types of products they bring in, that you've got to really look at these and review these ICPs probably every 6 months to make sure that even a current customer still is an ideal customer. That's probably sometimes some people get lost on that point.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting there that you created the scorecard. You said, I mean, it's a pretty methodical way to evaluate and look at when I'm sure you get leads or when you approach a customer or something like that to make sure they actually do fit. But I'm curious, so you talked about, reevaluating them, right? As their business evolves, right? Do they still kind of fit into what you're trying to do as well? So I mean, when that happens, right, if there's a shift in their profile, whether it's, the type of SKUs that they're now trying to sell or, the channels they're trying to go through, if that doesn't necessarily align with what you're trying to do from a 3PL perspective, I mean, how do you navigate that? What's kind of the way to go about that? I mean, do you kind of let them churn in a sense, or do you try to work with them to figure out a new aspect of your business? How do you approach that strategically?
I think, listen, it's a matter of confrontation, and I think the world of 3PLs sounds cliche, but we're very much a partnership with the brands. The brands, we're a critical aspect to the brand succeeding.
Yeah.
If we're not getting the orders out correctly on time, they can't grow. So they need us as much as we need them. And so we don't really classify them as being a customer. There definitely is more of a partnership. And a lot of our customers, we meet regularly and discuss what they're thinking, what their plans are for forecasts and what promotions they've got coming up, etc. So if someone deviates a lot from outside the ICP, then I think, again, it's having that conversation with them. So listen, is this the way you're going? Is this what's your longer term trajectory? Is it going to get more like this, or are you actually going to come? They may swing back onto ICP. They may be saying, we're testing these, but it's likely that we may drop these items, or whatever it may be. Just having these open conversations with them, understanding where they're going, and if they're really heading off piste, and therefore we don't believe that we can support them as much as they need, then it's for their best own good to say, let's call it a day, give you a fair amount of time to exit, find another 3PL. A lot of the times we will recommend another 3PL who we think is better suited. We're not looking to, you need to leave tomorrow. That's not the way we work. And on the flip side as well, I'm not really interested in sort of just saying, you can stay with us, but here's a higher price. Ultimately, my aim is for the best of them, best for them and best for us. And by pushing them out in a way of putting the prices up is not the way I like to do it. I'd rather have the conversation to them to say, listen, it's not working. Let's look at the next 3 months to see if you can find someone more suitable and someone who can look after you. And that's the way that I've generally approached these things.
Gotcha. Very interesting. Yeah. And I like that you've also, like you said, it's a little cliche, right? But the 3PL is the partner. And I think, most 3PLs are saying that out there. But, I think that it's great too that you've developed relationships with other 3PLs to be able to say to your client essentially, like, hey, like it's not a good fit anymore. Like, it's not you, it's me, right? In a sense, but be able to offer them, an exit plan essentially to go to another 3PL that you've already kind of worked with or vetted, or have an understanding that they're capable of doing what your client needs to do. And I think that's such a great thing to be able to do, to say, hey, we can't necessarily do business with you anymore, but here's somebody that can suit your new needs and really do a great job for you. And I think that's like fantastic that you've been able to do that and create that ecosystem there a little bit. And I'm curious your thoughts on that, because I mean, I see, Obviously there's a ton of PLs out there, right? But what's your view on kind of the community of 3PLs in a sense?
I think in the last couple of years, I personally have embraced really developing relationships with other 3PLs. I think until probably a couple of years ago, I was very much in my own shell. I didn't want to share, conscious of speaking to other 3PLs, maybe because they steal my business or, various other reasons. I think as I've developed the relationships with a lot of good quality 3PLs, I've realized firstly that there's loads of different types of 3PLs servicing different clients. As an example, fashion. Fashion needs a really specific type of 3PL. We don't really touch fashion at all, but there'll be 3PLs there who specifically do fashion and do it really well. Then there'll be loads of other 3PLs which are more boutique 3PLs. They're happy to work with smaller startup brands or brands that aren't growing so much and happy to have multiple brands. And then there'll be the big 3PLs who want the big multinationals. So there's loads of different types of 3PLs out there, and I think all of which we can learn from. Yes, we're 7 years into our journey, but the plans and ambitions are far greater than where we are, and I constantly learn different ways, whether it's to do with billing or setting up the warehouse or contracts. There's so many aspects of that I'm constantly learning on at the moment, and they can learn off me as well. So developing those relationships, having an open conversation is really, I think, really helped me this past 2-3 years as I've embraced that.
Yeah. I think it's pretty incredible to see. I mean, that community that is around the 3PL world, I've seen and been lucky to be a part of in some conversations too as well, and just see how helpful everybody's willing to be. I see some community discussions where it's like, oh, I'm having a challenge with this, or what do you guys do with this? And everybody seems to be very open to kind of help. And I think to your point, and going back to the idea of the ICP, I mean, obviously there's 3PLs that have very similar ICPs in that sense, but there's so many different specialties in the way people do certain things that, to your point, is that there's not necessarily an issue where there's not enough business for everybody in a sense, right? Or there's business that you don't even care about in a sense or would want to take on. So I think it's very interesting. So kind of talking about evolution here, and I guess I've been in business for a little over 7 years now, I think. Is that correct? Yeah. So over that time, I mean, obviously, e-commerce in itself has certainly evolved, right? We've seen definitely a lot of consumer behavior change. We've seen more consumers start to embrace e-commerce. We have a whole new kind of generation that's totally digitally embraced, right? So talk to us a little bit about, over that 7 years, what have you seen from, the change in e-commerce, the change in the 3PL landscape? I mean, what stands out to you the most that's kind of different now than when you started out in this world?
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Do you want more warehouse content delivered to your inbox? Sign up for our new email series called Warehouse Wisdom Wednesday to get an educational series of emails on warehouse basics delivered directly to you every Wednesday morning. Find the sign-up link in the show notes.
I think there's clearly, I mean, if you look at the growth of Shopify, I mentioned earlier on the conversation, Shopify, as most listeners probably know, are obviously the dominant player in shopping carts and being that background. A lot of consumers wouldn't really be aware of Shopify per se, because obviously, everyone's got their own branded websites. Maybe people see when they do the transactions the option to shop pay, so maybe they are aware of it. But Shopify has definitely been a key turning point in the ease of creating a website, both cost effectively, but also design wise, speed. Again, I wouldn't say I've been the forehand of creating the websites myself, but I see customers and the way that they're able to be so agile in their design, in everything they do. And it's amazing to see. It's amazing what they've created. So I think looking at the growth of Shopify, specifically probably the last 7 years since I've been in there, and seeing how it's developed so well, and how also the bigger retailers also have embraced Shopify. It used to be Shopify was for the smaller players, but Shopify have really managed to get into the bigger target market. The ease of people moving away from maybe 7 years ago when I was entering the market, a lot of the customers that were coming to us for fulfillment were using Amazon, eBay, and that was like their core orders. And a good 70-80% of their daily orders were coming through the marketplaces, and they had their own website on the side which would generate some orders. That's definitely shifted as the years went on. The websites became a critical part, and people realized that it's a valuable part. You own the customer, you can resell to the customer, you can give discounts, they become part of your community, and that whole community aspect within the brand became so critical, and they were able to get returning customers. Additionally, and where we've embraced is subscriptions. The whole subscription market, especially in sort of FMCG, fast moving goods, has also grown massively. And obviously they have to add value in the product they're offering, but the software behind it, such as Recharge or Skio, and the connectivity with Shopify makes the whole process for the customer really easy. They know by signing up to a subscription that they can easily opt out, they can make changes. So all these small different aspects has made the trust from the consumer a lot better. I think ultimately 10 years ago, the trust wasn't there from the consumer. Therefore, they went to Amazon, eBay, because that's where they trusted that their money wouldn't be taken. But now, you ask anyone on the street, they wouldn't second think generally about buying from a website, because they trust the process.
Yeah, I think that's very good insight there, because the trust certainly, I think, is a huge factor. I mean, I think about when I was younger and eBay was, becoming a thing, and, even that in a sense at a certain point was, there was some skepticism, because at that time it was like, if I wanted to get something off eBay, I have to ask my parents, right, to do it, and their credit card. And that was like skeptical, right? Like, oh, I'm going to put my my credit card information into this computer thing that I don't even know where it's going, right? Or I can't see that. And now, like you said, you walk down the street, you grab somebody and say, would you order, this product off the internet? There probably wouldn't be any hesitation, right? They probably do it already. So, I think that trust factor is certainly very interesting. So, you talked a little bit about the subscription standpoint there as well. So, there's a lot of things that go on and creating that community too that you mentioned as well. So from your aspect as Delta Fulfillment, as you start to get involved with these brands and work with them, how do you kind of set yourself apart as a 3PL from maybe some other 3PLs that are out there?
It's a good question. I think, listen, our core focus the last few years specifically has been providing the right service, right? Before running to do anything else, any other value add, the key aspect is receiving goods on time, putting away, getting the orders out the door, getting the orders picked and packed and out the door as quickly and accurately as possible. So, those things have to take focus. Once you get those right, and obviously we built a team to support the functionality, then it's okay, well, what else can we add to the customer? What other value add can we bring to the table to set ourselves apart? Then ultimately, communication and the relationship is also a really key aspect, which sometimes gets forgotten, especially the bigger 3PLs out there who have hundreds of customers. The communication can sometimes get lost. We've taken the approach to work with scaling and larger customers. So our customer count is quite low, but that enables us to provide, a really personable and good communication to them. And, we've taken that approach as our strategy. So that's definitely sets us apart from the big conglomerate 3PLs. I'm not going to start naming any names. Additionally, and more recently, we've actually tried to say, okay, where can we add value? And the two key partnerships which we're actually launching, and probably by the time this podcast comes out, we would have launched both of them, was earlier in September, we launched a partnership with a company called Penny Black, who do personalized inserts. and gift notes. So one of the challenges we've always had over the years is how do we, customers want to give gifts out to people, or they want to upsell, or they want to put inserts in them, but they want them to be personalized inserts. How do they get a customer to come back? How do they offer them a discount code? So Penny Black has the software to look at the pattern of how much one person's bought from the website, what they've bought, and then create a targeted upsell and discount code on each and every order, which we really liked, and we thought, okay, this could add a lot of value. Additionally, they've also developed sort of, again, branded gift notes, which again, as part of their technology, we obviously have a special printer which will be on a packing desk, and they can support this technology. So that's one specific area where we thought, how can we add value to our customers? How can we enable our customers to get more sales? And this is a partnership which we've embraced. A second partnership which we've also launched now in October is TikTok.
Okay.
And what this is, we've teamed up with a TikTok agency, and what we've done is we're offering our customers the ability to create warehouse content. So you may be on TikTok,
Right.
and a lot of the time, and there's a lot of engaging content around showing a picker, a packer, picking the product and taping it and putting it in the box. It's very engaging, does very well on TikTok. But obviously, when you're in the 3PL, it's hard to get hold of that content.
Yeah.
So we, together with this partner, we've got a few content creators to come into the warehouse regularly and take and provide content to our customers that they can use on their social media, specifically on TikTok.
Interesting.
Which is quite interesting. And we've also, we're looking to create a specific area in the warehouse where our customers can run TikTok lives as well from. Because again, we've got all the product in the warehouse, and it enables a customer to really embrace TikTok, because there's no doubt about it, TikTok over the last year has really become more mainstream. He started off as a very cheap, discounted sort of marketplace.
Yeah.
But a lot of brands, especially we've got a few brands already who are doing very well on TikTok, and I can see it becoming a mainstream, well, it already is a mainstream marketplace, and it's going to be a fast-growing marketplace. Will it catch up with Amazon? Who knows? But it's definitely going to give them a challenge.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting approach, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And I've seen a couple brands saying they've done like TikTok lives to do shopping for like a couple hours, and it's been like some of like their biggest days ever, right?
Crazy.
And I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and the growth and just the volume that's coming through TikTok Shop. I mean, I think it's just growing like crazy from some of the numbers I've seen as well. And it's hard to deny the power of TikTok right now. I think it's interesting, and I think it's telling too, to your point. Will it get to the size of Amazon, or whatever the case may be? But I see Amazon has added some like social selling aspect as well, which maybe is a little bit influenced from that, we could say. Sure. But I think it's really interesting to see that. I think that's really creative too on your part to be able to provide that for, like you said, these brands that maybe want to have that pick and pack kind of content to put out there, but they don't have their own warehouse, so like you guys can provide that for them, which I think adds additional value for them and helps them to leverage that channel even more, which obviously in turn, if they can push more volume, that's better for you guys, right? At the end of the day.
That's the plan.
Yeah, sure. So really interesting. So as we have this episode coming out here, I mean, we're kind of just on the of the big peak season and holiday here. So tell us kind of a little bit, what does peak season prep look like for Delta Fulfillment?
Yeah, I mean, peak season prep starts early, a lot earlier than peak season.
Yeah.
The challenge we have in our industry, or our target market, and going back to ICPs and the types of brands that we are working with, is that they themselves are very fast growing brands. So, and they've only been around 3-4 years.
Yeah.
So data isn't so forthcoming.
Yeah.
So, when we go out in August, September time asking for forecasts, it's, we will ask them, please put together your best foot forward forecast in the moment, and then we will have to revisit it as the months go on. So it can be challenging, because obviously forecasts will drive everything. the number of orders that we're expecting to do and when they happen and when the Black Friday deals are going live. There's so many different aspects. So we will, we will work closely with them in the run up to peak, looking at forecasts, looking at what point we have to draft new staff, do training. Do we have enough picking trolleys? Do we have enough packing desks? Goods in. Do we need to provide more slots for goods in? So there's so many different aspects there. Obviously this podcast is coming out in November or just before Black Friday. And I'm sort of speaking to myself now. I'm hoping that we've delivered on that. But listen, every peak's challenging. However much planning you put in, there's always going to be a few things that sort of creep up. Some customers will completely outshoot their forecasts, and it's how you deal with that. You can't just say, well, we can't do any orders. It's a matter of how do we react. But obviously there is a limit to how much you can react in that moment.
Yeah.
A lot of the prep has to be done. So we try and work with the customers. We don't want our whole relationship, all the hard work we've done for the whole year to be ruined by 1 week of issues. So it's really critical for us as well that we do as best we can. We show the brands we're doing as best we can, and also work together with the brands to make sure that they are communicating to their customers to give them more time, right? Because most people, if you're buying on Black Friday, you're expecting the goods, and a lot of people aren't expecting the goods to arrive next day.
Right.
So as long as you communicate to the customer and there's an expectation there, then that helps a lot. That helps a lot for us. Yeah. So again, it's a partnership, which is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very good thing that you mentioned there, kind of like where, a lot of these brands are fairly new in a sense, right, too. So the idea of getting, some kind of accurate forecast can be challenging in a sense, right? Yeah. And I'm sure even in some cases too, maybe you're dealing with a brand and it's their first peak season or something like that. It might be like, well, we have no idea, right? Like what is the forecast maybe in some cases, right? I'm sure you run into that. So, I think, it's very interesting there. And, I think it's such a test of, strong 3PL to be able to navigate some of those challenges. And I love that you mentioned the communication there and, being able to communicate with your client who then can communicate to their customer as well. I think that kind of flow through of communication is such an ideal aspect of trying to get through those somewhat challenging times and, more than higher stress, higher volume type of times as well. I'm curious in that regard. There's been a lot of conversation in the U.S. here around like labor challenges and, being able to get enough labor within the warehouse, whether it's for, a 3PL or, somebody doing self-fulfillment just in general. Do you guys see similar challenges in the UK over there around labor?
Yeah, labor is always a challenge, but I think with the right planning and the right, you're never going to just bring people in, agency staff in, and expect every single head you bring in to be good or good enough or stay with you. So it's just working through the averages, the stats, trying to identify from day one the ones you think actually want to be there, are willing to learn, are willing to listen. And the better you get at that, the better your training is as well, the more likelihood is someone will stay with you for the long term. If they come in and they see that there's no structure and there's no process and the training isn't good, the likelihood is they'll just walk out the next day. Yeah. So it's a lot of it's up to us to get the most out of who's available to come in.
Interesting. I like that. Yeah, definitely the structure and process can make a huge difference in that initial impression and experience, I think, for the employee or the temp worker, whatever the case may be. So as we close out here and we talk a little bit about the future of Delta Fulfillment, which you guys recently got a new facility, right? So congratulations on that. So tell us a little bit about that and kind of what that means for the future.
Yeah, so obviously as we continue to grow, our current brands continue to grow, and we obviously looked to onboard new brands. We got to a point where we had outgrown our old facility and we needed somewhere new. Not an easy task in the world of fulfillment, moving, as I've seen. A
deep breath there,
a costly experience. But again, I love experiences. We learn a lot from it, and next time we do it will be even better. Yeah, thankfully it went pretty as smoothly as we could have liked. Obviously, we're running a live environment, trying not to disturb any of our customers. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges you've got is trying to run customers out of 2 warehouses, to have teams working out of 2 warehouses. And we wanted somewhere which could enable us to grow further. How long this warehouse will last, it may only last us, this warehouse may last us another 3 or 4 years with the rate of growth that we're going for. But it's hard to find that balance between not getting somewhere too big and obviously all the costs that come along with that, and not getting somewhere too small, which allows you to grow. Yeah. So we think the new site it's a new build, so it's nice. It's a nice environment for staff to come into. It's light. We've invested, a lot into the security and the Wi-Fi and everything that goes with it. We've made a nice sort of environment for staff, for canteen and offices. So, it's definitely a step up for us. It's rewarding back our dedicated employees, and hopefully it's the start of things to come.
All right, great. And I think that I love that you said it's rewarding the employees that have been dedicated to you. And I think that's a great way to look at it, and, be able to put that in place to make sure that they're, performing at the level that you want them to perform at, but also taking care of them in the same regard. And I think that's kind of at the core of a great warehouse organization or 3PL organization. So definitely appreciate that. So Dani, it's been a pleasure to talk to you here, learn more about Delta Fulfillment and kind of your journey along the way, and get some insights on the market from you too as well. If people are interested in getting in touch with you or interested in learning more about Delta Fulfillment, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn is probably a good starting point. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn if you want to put up with my content. But you can always DM me directly on there, and always happy to have chats. To any startups or anyone in the journey. Obviously, if your main listeners here are American, we know we've helped a lot of US brands tackle sort of UK and Europe, which has obviously got massive potential. US obviously is big. It's a big population. Yeah, probably 5 times, 7 times the size of UK. But the UK e-commerce market is very strong, and always happy to speak to sort of US brands who are looking to explore the UK and how make it as easy for them as possible.
All right, great. And we'll definitely put a link to your LinkedIn and Delta Fulfillment as well at thenewwarehouse.com, so people can easily reach out to you and find more information from you. So, Dani, thank you very much for joining me on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.